Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well as can be. I'm just sitting here chillaxing Sunday afternoon, um, just thinking about some things. Um, as you know, or as you may know, I like to peruse through the Bible and think about things uh, that are written therein and extract lessons from the things that I read and try to internalize it in such a way that I can apply it to my life. Now, when I say apply it to my life, I don't necessarily mean uh, okay. Let's say it's your it's a spiritual duty to feed the hungry, and then you read that in the book, and so you go about applying it, and you take food to the hungry. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If a person is hungry, by all means, give him or her some food. But when I say apply, I mean the application to, uh, applying it to my heart. What we want is not to have to go out there and act it out. We want to apply or to internalize it to where it's already it becomes a reaction, a natural reaction, an internal operating fact that we go out and we do it, we be it without having to think about it. You know, that's uh, what I mean by apply it, apply the word of God to my life, meaning apply it, install it into my heart. So, I want to talk a little bit about the first fruit of your labor or the firstborn. Like, if you read the Bible, you'll notice that in many instances, uh, people will dedicate the first fruits of their labor or their firstborn sons to God. And there's a reason for that. There's a spiritual reason for that. Uh, there's a spiritual implication. Like the Bible is a book of 100% spirituality. Even the contradictions happen for a reason. The contradictions are there for a reason to teach spiritual lessons. Most people who don't believe in the integrity of the Bible will say, it's too many contradictions. Well, that's because those contradictions are there for a reason to teach you spiritual lessons about human nature. You just got to learn how to, or they just got to learn how to see deeper into the situation to extract the real meaning from even the spiritual contradictions. And when you think about it, what I'm about to talk about, firstborn or first fruit, a lot of people have really, really misapplied that, especially with the firstborn. There are people that have actually killed their children because this is what they thought God required, or this is my firstborn son, or what have you. Recall that when Abraham was required to sacrifice Isaac, his firstborn son, he was told to spare the boy, don't kill him. That ain't what I meant. That's not what I meant. To sacrifice, I guess the better word for it would be to dedicate. Dedicate your firstborn son to me, is what God was saying. You can interchange those two words, dedicate and sacrifice. That's what was going on. Let's say you are a farmer and you have a field of apple trees, and you know you gather your harvest of apples and you separate them. Of course, you put the big juicy ones in one pile. You put the other somewhat mediocre edible ones in another pile. They're still good for you. You can eat them, that kind of thing. And then there's some with worm holes in them that have kind of gone rotten a little bit. You put the bad ones in a pile on their own because you remember one bad apple can spoil a whole barrel. And now you have to give some of your first fruits to God, sacrifice or dedicate some of your first fruit. Well, I guess it goes without saying, God's not going to eat an apple. I mean, not that I know of. I mean, if you've seen or witnessed something to that effect, by all means, give me a shout out and tell me about it. But there's a spiritual implication, the first of your fruit and the firstborn that you must dedicate to God. And the spiritual implication has to do with your first reaction, your first mental reaction, your very first thought about whatever's going on with you, whatever happens to you in the moment. What is your first thought about it? All of them should be consistent. All of the first fruits of your offering should be consistent, consistently godly. All of your firstborn sons, which is your first thoughts, your sons are your thoughts that are created in your image and after your likeness. Yes, the firstborn of your spirit, your first thoughts should be on the same page with God, or in the realm of a godly mind. You should have godly first reactions, and that's where it gets weird because oftentimes the first fruit, the first offering, the first dedication of the firstborn son, the first thought, depending on the circumstances, and more often than not, is always the bad apples with the worm infested, rotted worm infested apples. It's not the good juicy ones. For instance, I witnessed this not too long ago, and it's something that I see often, and there are other circumstances that are akin to it that I often see. I've been guilty of it, but I'm just going to give a hypothetical situation that's actually true, that actually happened. I've seen time and time again. Let's say you work in an office environment and you're behind on your work. Somebody rushes in. Hey, the boss has called an emergency meeting. We got to go now. And you're like, God dang it, man. Damn. He doing that crap on purpose. He knows I'm behind. I ain't got time for this crap. Blah, 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 blah. That's your firstborn son, your first thought about a situation. And then when it's time to enter that room where the meeting is being held, you magically, oh, hi, Mr. So and so. Oh, yeah, yeah, I get it. We need to have this meeting because, yeah, we need to understand how productivity is failing, and we need to figure out how to plug in those holes. So you change it up, presto, change up. Whether that second reaction is fake or not, who knows? But I suppose we all know that we don't want to be in that meeting because we figure it's a waste of time. But not to get off the subject, your first thought should not be the negative reaction. God requires your first thoughts to be positive, to be constructive. Otherwise, He won't accept them. You give God the very best of the fruit, the very best of your first thoughts. That's what He accepts, and that's what He manifests for you. That goodness, the goodness. Your first thoughts should be God-like. Your reactions, and reactions are spontaneous. That's what makes them so difficult to get a grip on. They're spontaneous and impulsive, and I know that sounds like it's the same thing, but a little bit of a difference. Uh, they can be spontaneous, but they don't have to be impulsive. And what that means is that they can be spontaneous, giving you a chance to see them consciously before you just blurt something out. If you're unconscious to the process, boom, then it's just impulsive. You blurt out something in your mind, of course. Sometimes we use words too. Sometimes we speak those negative words depending on who's around or not. But when you're unconscious to the process, you don't have the spiritual light to know, okay, this is the thought that I should pick to let loose in the mental atmosphere. And, you know, when you're unconscious to the process, you're fumbling around in the dark, and more than likely, you're going to pick something negative to spew forth in your mental atmosphere. So, the first fruit, the firstborn, the spiritual implication, it's all about your first mental reaction. And if your first mental reaction is pleasing in the sight of God, God will magnify it. And if it's consistent, if this is what you consistently do, then your life will change for the better like you can't even imagine, because you're constantly offering God the first fruit of your labor, or the firstborn of your mental sons, your thoughts. Yeah. Yeah, God will magnify those thoughts because those are the ones he will receive. So keep that in mind. Remember, every story in the Bible has a spiritual implication, a spiritual lesson that we need to understand how to apply, apply to the heart, not go out into the world and apply it to the world by just acting it out. I mean, that kind of application is super temporary. because there'll be days where you'd be like, I don't feel like doing that. I ain't going out and doing good. I'm just gonna have me some me time, and it's okay. And I ain't even sweating these people a day. Application to the heart. That's what it's all about. And when your firstborn thoughts are pleasing in the sight of God, they grow. They how can I put it? They magnify. And theoretically, at some point, if you're consistent with it, according to the Bible, you'll be able to manifest miracles. That would be cool, right? That would be cool. But like what I said earlier, the stories in the Bible have spiritual implications. If you think about it, the firstborn son of Adam, Cain, represents that negative, bad reaction. And oftentimes people, when they react negatively at first, they have a change of mind. Sometimes quick, sometimes not so quick. But they be like, "Oh yeah, well I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have thought that." So they go back and change up the situation as best as they can. And Abel, the second born, represents that change of heart. That change of heart that tells you, I need to do right. I need to be right. I need to think right. Now, this isn't to say or to discredit the historical figures or that kind of thing. I'm just pointing out the spirituality of it. And as you know, God accepted Abel's offering. Think about Esau and Jacob. Esau was the firstborn, and the firstborn, as we just said, represents that first bad reaction. Um, Esau was born with a hairy body, red hair, as a matter of fact. And a lot of people think that, well, you probably know what a lot of people think that represents, but the red hair represents the animal nature, the negative nature, the worldly nature. The hair itself represents that, the redness thereof represents sin, which is why Esau ate red stew. Esau represents sin, the first born, the first reaction of human nature. And Jacob stole his birthright, but Jacob's journey was kind of interesting because Jacob's journey represents conditioning yourself mentally. Jacob's journey represents the mental conditioning of yourself, the persistent, patient practice of getting it together, getting your spiritual act together to the point to where the best reaction comes first. Usually the best reaction, excuse me, is the second reaction. But Jacob's journey represents the best reaction, which when he was first, he stole the birthright. He was the second reaction, but his journey represents him turning it around to where the best reaction is now the first reaction. Hence, he was able to become Israel. Israel, the name change, represents a change of nature. It represents a change of heart. the change from Jacob to Israel represents, yeah, you getting a new name, a change of heart. And now your first reactions, your firstborn, your first fruit are the best. Anyway, I hope all of this made sense. Uh, try to explain it as best as I could. I've written about it. I know if you read what I've written about it, it would be resound to you loud and clear. I like to write. I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker. But yeah, there you have it. The spiritual implications of giving God your firstborn or the first fruit of your labor. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to this channel. God bless.